Hey, Captain Roger, it's day 23. Let's go for a walk. So, as we're walking with God, by walking through the Bible, we're getting to the point in the story where Moses has led the Israelites out of captivity. He's just starting to pull them out of Egypt there. And they get a 3-day start on the Egyptians, roughly, before the king and his officials start to question what they'd been thinking. I mean, these people, they just go, this is their labor force. It's a major component of their economy, and they're leaving. How are they going to function without them? So they pull together a pursuing force of fast chariots, followed by quick marching infantry, and they head after this vast, disorganized caravan of Israelites. Meanwhile, God has directed Moses to switch back and forth a couple of times to make it look like they're not sure where they're going. Now, what isn't clear when you read scripture is whether anyone actually told the Israelites that this was a trick and not just bad leadership. So they find themselves wandering back and forth for a few days, and then they realize that they've come to be trapped up against the shore of the sea with an Egyptian army quickly cutting off any hope of escape by land. And even though they're only free because of a string of miracles they had both seen and been blessed by, they're afraid that what's happened will very certainly result in death for many of them and a return to harsh slavery for the rest. They have no trust whatsoever in God or in Moses. They turn to Moses and they say, what? Weren't there enough graves in Egypt? You had to drag us out here to the desert to die? And then they say, didn't we just tell you to leave us alone? We were doing fine as slaves. Now, God had a plan for them. They're not trapped. In a few hours after this, they'd be on their way across the sea through this amazing gap created by winds holding back the waters so that they could walk through on dry land. And not very long after that, their pursuers, trying to follow them, would be drowned when those winds stopped and the waves crashed down to smother the fighting men and destroy the last outside resistance to the freedom of Israel's children. Walking with God would bring them safely to a distant shore on their way to true freedom, just the way they'd been promised. See, the Lord always keeps his promises. And if they had just believed that, they wouldn't have been so stressed. I wonder why we always seem to forget that. Set free by miracles, the Israelites here, they're going to fall back into complaining and being afraid that God had abandoned them within just a few weeks. And it's an ugly cycle that they repeat over and over through the generations. In fact, that's an ugly cycle that many of us repeat several times over our own lives as well. Staying focused on walking with God and not allowing ourselves to wander off or be distracted can help us remember that we need to trust. Help us remember that when we're with a guide, when you're with a guide who can do the impossible, there's nothing to fear from a path that looks difficult. We just need to stay with God because he promises he'll always stay with us. I need to finish my walk. Grace and peace to you all.